Hello, and welcome to Talking Out a Slot, the podcast for men who play with toy cars. I'm Nick.
And I'm Scott. And this week we'll be talking mostly about gathering together in an underground basement with a bunch of other men and playing with toy cars.
Men.
I'm talking, of course, about a night's racing at the Farnborough Park Slot Car Club.
Indeed.
Which takes place in the basement of a school, an old school. And to paint a picture, for those of you who haven't bought a copy of the current issue of Motorsport magazine, still available.
Myself in that.
Still available. Well, that's appalling because it's your article that's in there. I would hope. But so there's Nick wrote an article about the club, which is in the current issue of Motorsport magazine. And if you want to know which month that is, I can't tell you offhand. April. There you go. It's the one with the F1 season preview in it. That's a load of guff, but actually Nick's stuff about the Slot Car Club is well worth reading. So
let's face it, there's more change in the order in a night's racing for us than there is in Formula One.
This is very true, very true. But to paint a picture for those who haven't bought that yet, emphasis on the yet there, it's a curved roof. It's a proper cavern, isn't it? It's a sort of old.
It is. It's Gothic.
It's Gothic. No, it's fairly bright, but it's not. There's no candelabras and spiders' webs. Well,
it reminds me of Winterfell in Game of Thrones, where the Starks live.
Slot race, Game of Slots.
Winter is coming.
Anyway, that's where we were last night. And I had been last week, but I hadn't been this year at all before that. And you've missed a couple of months for family reasons, obviously. But and we didn't do very well as a consequence. The excuses I'm piling in. We didn't do very well. Do you want to get? Shall I get
my excuses out of the way? My controller didn't work, so I had to borrow. Well, I tried several. The one I ended up with was like a on-off switch. My tyres are unprepped, unoiled, and uneverythinged, and I basically was a bit crap. So I've gone from being a bit of a Max Verstappen at the club to being a Lewis, wondering where it's all gone wrong.
All right, interesting choices that you identify with. So even your worst one is a 7 times world champion.
Well, it could be 6 if Mr. Massa wins his court case.
Should we? That's not going to happen. Should we have the slot counselling services? So you think you're a world champion? Well, I think not being there for a while, you were literally out of the groove. In fact, being out of the groove was a feature. Again, for people to understand. So we run 6 classes of our own cars, 2 of club cars, and each class is 4 races, 1 in each lane. And the number of times that you managed, you in the we general, not you specifically sense of the word, de-slot just because of bumps in the track or forgetting where the corners are and slowing down.
Yeah, the join between the inner pair of lanes and the outer pair of lanes, that can be a bit problematic at times.
Yeah, it's not. This is old Ninko, and I mean old Ninko track. Venerable, if we were being polite about it. And there's a lot of lumps and bumps in concrete. But, you get to learn those. Yeah.
Slottits, NSRs, sideways, they can all soak it up quite well. Ninko cars soak it up perfectly. You tend to get 10 laps out of Ninkos, all 4 cars, no problem. SCX, depends on the car, but they can do it. But the Scale Extrix and other randoms of the world, they just tend to tip over more often.
If we were using a real track comparison, I'd compare it to the upcoming Sebring. Very topical because it's the Sebring 12-hour race this weekend.
Respect the bumps.
Yes. But it was there's a number of ways. So forgetting where the corners are, forgetting where the bad bumps are, being nerfed off. And nerfing obviously is a technical term for when your so-called friends and clubmates smash into you and knock you off. I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I maintain it's my lack of talent. I'm not doing it deliberately. It's more flailing than nerfing in my sense. And then the one which is a relatively recent victim to is being marshalled off, which is where another car has crashed all of its own volition ahead of you. And in the course of being tidied up, your perfectly in the slot and going fine car gets knocked off.
It's not uncommon, and frankly, that's in some ways an argument for crash and burn, because the number of clubs I've been to where people get apoplectic with the marshals for taking too long or putting the car back on the wrong lane or whatever else, and it's like, just dude, chill. It's a toy car. Deal with it.
It does get that. Although I have to say, this is one of the great benefits of digital, of course. You just stick the car in any lane and off it goes. You don't have to worry about checking which colour it is. Anyway, it was good fun. One of the things I particularly enjoyed was that a class which is 60 Sports, and I took along this very old, I refer to them as Tupperware cars, because if you look at the car, you can actually bend the body. I mean, you could bounce it off the walls quite literally to no harm at all. I think some of them were French, weren't they? I'm not sure if this is a French one or not.
I think that is a French one.
It's a French one.
I mean, the basic rule is a clamshell body with a blue open Mabuchi motor and being of that vintage. So I mean, you've got that one, which I have to say had enormous presence, particularly as it came down the straight when I was marshalling turn one, and it does look rather 917-ish. I've got the Ferrari P4,
yes, yeah.
which I've painted up as a Lemons car. Got a number plate on the back and all that sort of palaver.
Lovely.
But it's just a bog standard car other than that, with Altman tyres, I think, on this, because when I true them, it comes up with sort of grey dust rather than black. So I'm thinking that's Altman's.
Yeah, I think these were, or still are, obviously, but I think it's a long time since they were new.
Yeah.
To the point where any tread has now been well worn off, and that's got nothing to do with a bit of sandpaper. That's just running. But it was good. They're good fun. Nice cars.
It's nice cars. It's quite evenly matched. The Javelins and the Mirages and the other. There was another made-up one as well as the Javelin, wasn't there? But yeah, they're fine. They make a nice aroma.
They make a nice, yes.
Smells of childhood.
They kind of warm up as they're going. Yes, they are. The smells. As someone said last night, this reminds the smells of my childhood, and I said, I hope we're talking about past the nappy stage. Anyway, the other class is 70s F1, which I happily dug out my SCX Altair 6-wheel Tyrrell. But you've just told me this isn't actually eligible. So I've run it for 2 weeks, and nobody, including you, didn't mention that last night. I was running an illegal car.
If nobody else had mentioned it, I wasn't going to I wasn't going to get aerated over it. In fact, it was quite interesting that it ran very well compared to the modern scale electric and fly cars that were there.
And polycar. Was there not some polycar?
No, there's no
polycar. The old
Hornby,
were they? Okay. I thought one of the 72s was a polycar. But I mean, it's all terribly English of you all. You know, you see somebody's literally cheating.
Well, I think it was Graham said, "Oh, you should see Scott's 6-wheeler," and I thought, "Oh, you've got one of the new scale electric ones. Oh, that'd be interesting to see." Oh no, it's an old SCX, which shouldn't be in this class.
Anyway,
I was in enough drama of my own without pointing out your misdeeds. I took, because my preferred car is a Fly Lotus 78. It's the quickest one I've found, and normally it's a good 12 to 16 point car, but it's completely lunched its internals. It will not ever move again. So, well, not without serious investment, and frankly, it's not worth it. So I brought my scale electric Ferrari 312 T2, which was the Regazzoni car, and I repainted it as the Lauda car with IndyCars decals. And I took the tyres off my Fly because they're a million times better than the scale electric ones, and I used a bit of clear cockpit glue to hold them on the rims because they're a little bit baggy. Put the car proudly on the track, thinking, well, it'll be bad, but it won't be as bad as it would be on its standard tyres. And it refused to move. There was absolutely no current going through anything there. And I did actually use this last time, so something has happened whilst it's been sitting in a box for 2 months. Anyway.
And a typical Italian car, basically, just through
basically.
a half.
So I ended up using one of the club's 4-lane car fly March 761s, and was slithering around like I was on slicks and it was peeing down with rain, basically. It was hopeless. When all 4 are the same, it's fine, it all works, and it's a nice class. But when everyone's got soft NSR tyres on McLaren M23s, or they've got SCX cars, which shouldn't be there, then it...
I didn't know.
We have an old SCX class, which that is eligible for, and please do bring it, because it's nice to see.
The class, I mean, 2 things that listeners will be picking up on this is the somewhat chaotic and terribly English nature of the club, the Farnborough Club. But I mean, if it was a building, it would be Tudor. It would be timber clad. Let's be honest. Not just in terms of physicality, but in terms of the attitude. But so it is a bit that way. But it's in fact, physically, I think I would describe it as it's a sort of bunker-esque, because it's in the basement of an old school, and so it's like an arched brick room, really, isn't it? It's sort of subterranean, and with some it's quirky.
It reminds me of Winterfell from Game of Thrones, the Stark's northern castle, and you're down there with the bones of Ned Stark, King of the North.
None of us were wearing animal furs. I should just stress that.
No, that's true.
Not yet, anyway.
We also ran these. These are a class at the moment. The
yes, Pioneer Legends.
Pioneer Legend. My one is a white kit that I painted as the car that Dale Earnhardt Jr. ran, which was a tribute to his grandfather's NASCAR. So it's Earnhardt Family Values motor, that one. They're tippy-uppy. They make a horrible noise. The gears sound like they're trying to kill each other. But they're quite entertaining and a bit different.
They're fun, actually. And we ran, last time I went round to David's at Southwater, which is a polycar track. So I ran them there. They run very nicely. They drift nicely on a smooth track where you can, and sweeping corners. You can sort of balance them out a bit. They're a bit point and squirt at Farnborough, aren't they? Because it's the nature of it. No brakes either. So, but I think have we talked about the braking or the lack of braking issue? That's usually again, to paint a picture. The start line is at the end of the longest street, and then there's a 90 right angle corner at the end. Each lane doesn't have equal voltage, so in yellow lane you can apply throttle and go vroom, and be off the race at the first corner. In the red lane, which is the opposite side of the track, you can apply full throttle and barely move off the line, depending on what you're running. So it does take a little. It's not just about which car are you driving and which way does the track go. It's about which power is coming in. It is
possible to win all 4.
As happened several times last night. People were getting 16 points, so they were winning all 4. Largely through to lots of other people like me throwing themselves off, it must be said. But it's all good fun. It's all good fun. Yeah, and I took my new...
a class that works. Slotted DTM.
Yeah, but again, good old slotted. You can't go wrong, can you?
And then
World Cup winners,
the 2 most frustrating classes for me last night were both the Scalextric ones, because my cars just kept falling over. It does when you're running non-magnet and no brakes. You've really got to be on your game in making sure that they are not going to tip up at the slightest provocation, particularly on that bumpy track. And mine do. So here's my Porsche, which is showing a few signs of wear and tear. Simon from Scalextric saw this one, was like, "You raced that?" Yeah. Apparently these are going for like stupid money on the Bay of E, but this one I bought to repaint anyway, so I haven't yet had the time to repaint it.
It is funny how, I mean, on the forums and amongst the racers and those who supposedly know, they poo-poo electric cars. And yet there are some electric cars which are worth seemingly well over list price, and increasingly you do that on the second-hand market. I mean, that Porsche doesn't strike me as being that remarkable as either a real car or a slot car. So it's
Well,
interesting that
it's a
yeah.
Pucker Le Mans GTLM. And it's the one I've got the decals for the Patrick Long black and blue Tag Heuer car, which was a race that I was at. Pat Long's a good mate of mine, and it was pretty. And I think it looks a nicer model than the Scaly Auto one.
I would agree with that. I would agree with this. The shape is more accurate, I think.
So you've got the more modern GT3 one in the FAF livery, haven't you? With
It's
tartan.
Very pretty car.
It is a very pretty car. The rear wing pings off quite easily, doesn't it?
That's the first time that's ever happened, I have to say. So there was a momentary shock because that's a bit of a favourite car, that one, and so I was a bit mad racing it really. But anyway, it does it pinged back on just as easily.
Oh, that's good.
Just as easily. The other car which I brought, which I wanted to just do a little bit of fun with, a new car, Carrera BMW 6 Series GT, huge. And its hugeness apparently also applies to its guide blade, because one of the quirks of the very aged and venerable Ninko track at Farnborough is that the guide width the slot width is not necessarily consistent. So I stuck it in the slot, pulled the throttle, and it went about a foot, and then wedged immovably from there on.
Yeah, you need the red guide that comes in the back of the box.
Yeah, I've never had to change a Carrera guide before, so it's practically tuning, isn't it? If you change the guide, I don't know. Anyway, but pretty motor car, very nice. So.
Well, the other class that we've been running this season, which should stop at the end of this month, but probably won't because we haven't had the AGM yet, and we're not likely to. So the other class we're running at the moment is a staple for almost every club that I can think of: scale electric muscle cars. So again, standard. Mags out, and then free choice of rubber as long as it fits under the arches. This one used to be a rocket ship. As you can see, it's got diddly widdly little.
I did notice when I marshalled that car at one point, I thought, he's running flats at the front. And then some thick paint rather than tyres, I think I'd call them.
Nice squishy ones. Yeah, I don't know where these front tyres came from, but I'm very glad I've got them. Apart from now, for some reason, it's decided to go all unsteady on me. Or maybe it's my finger's gone unsteady, but it now it needs a bit of support there because otherwise it's just off we go. It's off we go. It's like Clarkson in the Reliant Regal. It's like, whoop, no, off we go, and whoop.
Well, that's because you put those super skinny front tyres on it, and they're not touching the track. You see, so
yeah, but
it really is like a Reliant
the standard tyres on over the bumps. The wheels lever the guide out of the slot, and you go straight on when you should be turning a corner.
Yeah, I know that well because people will be amazed to learn, not for any competitive reason, just simply because it was the only one I could find in a hurry, was the Javelin, which is not only narrower and possibly a bit taller, but it's got an inline rather than a side, what should we call it? Can't think of the term now. Anyway, transverse sidewinder. So it's at many disadvantages as a slot car, but it looks lovely. And the tyres were so bad, and the only thing I had to hand as I was running out the door, I pulled some tyres off an old SCX NASCAR, which fitted-ish, but they weren't particularly grippy either.
Well, Jim will tell you that the Javelin is the car to have at Home Farm.
Yes.
Because it's not carrying around a full interior. It's got a little tray. Inlines or sidewinders doesn't make much difference on the scale electric car. And the wheels are Euro standard, so you can put slotted tyres on them.
Oh, well, I may try that then. But but you got to say, Jim, we're talking about Jim Moyes, or Mr. M on the forums. Jim is one of those, he can win if he raced the box it came in. So, I mean, it's not, trying to copy him is never a good. And Jim's, I was thinking about this last night, actually. If you're running the same classes as we do for sort of 3 months, so potentially you could have 12, 13 weeks of the same cars. He would bring a different car each time, just because he's got them, and B, for the challenge of, rather than the rest of us go, which one's the best? I'm going to keep that one. That's the one I'm going to hone. He just keeps bringing a different one. So, which is, part of the fun. And the other thing you mentioned, which people will probably, was an AGM. So as well as having being all terribly English about it and not pointing out that one of the members is running an illegal car, we have an AGM, but we don't, apparently, because it's been going, this is where we decide things
Well,
like,
it was supposed to happen last year, and Graham was the chairman, took ill, so we put it back. But until an AGM happens, it's, things just build up ahead of steam, and lots of little sort of niggles, questions, queries, and grievances sort of just lay festering in the woodwork and need to be winkled out and stamped on. So we need to get that done for everyone's sanity, and to just get back to some new classes, because some of them I'm a bit tired of, and I've only been there twice this season, but I'm tired of some of these classes.
Well, just to what you did suggest when we were looking at when we could hold the AGM, that we might actually record it as an episode, a sort of proper Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
political
Big Brother
intrigue.
House meets Game of Thrones. Yeah.
There's a format for a slot car club. If you lose, you leave, sort of thing. I suppose that probably happens. Anyway, enough about our fun. As you can tell, we had fun.
Well, you're having a birthday, or you've had a birthday.
I am about to have a birthday. It depends.
So you've got shiny plastic things, have you?
Well, the first one that arrived, because my nearest and dearest said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I went, "This."
Right.
So that arrived, and that's lovely. So thank you. And then
I can hear people at Shell screaming at the very sight of that car.
Oh, because you've got this. Yeah, I'm not sure. Petrol company sponsorship is, they've got a lot of money to spend, and I don't think they mind where they spend it. Is probably the way to go with
Well, no, but Shell spends a lot of money having an exclusive deal to be on BMW racing cars, and suddenly there's one covered in Total.
Technically not really a works car, though.
No, true.
So it's, so I'm going to be careful how I say this. It's a Walkenhorst. Anyway, it's that kind of begins with W. Amongst the other things, and then my mum, bless her, usually gets me sweaters for birthdays and Christmas. And when I tell you that I've got a lot of sweaters, I finally said to you, please, whatever you get me, don't buy me sweaters. She said, well, what do you want then? And this year, it happened to be on Mother's Day, and Scaletric were running an ad or a promotion on Facebook, which was an image of Fab 1 saying, Mum, you're fab. So I went, you can have one of these. So she arrived yesterday. I only unpacked this morning. So I've got the Lady Penelope Fab 1, which is just is ridiculous and fabulous all at the same time. I had held the prototype in my hand at Gaydon last year. I hadn't really appreciated quite how huge it is. The M6, the Carrera M6 that I've told you before, is not a small car. And if I do that, there is beside it. It's just huge. So I haven't had it on the track yet. That's the afternoon's joy. And the other part of it was a Polycar Gilles Villeneuve Ferrari, which I haven't even taken out the cellophane yet. Not because I'm going to become, fanatically collectory about it. It's just didn't have time. So I'm going to do that carefully later. But the Lady Penelope, the thing it makes me wish, in a rather bizarre way, is that they were going to redo, or they had waited till they had that big box to do the Batmobile, because I'm sure the Batmobile would be equally as long, if not as wide. However, I think that's going to be my pairing. So when I get people who don't know about slot cars and come to visit the track, Normally it's Starsky and Hutch and Batman that I get out because they kind of recognise those. I think Lady Penelope will supplant.
Well, that's
Starsky
a good present for a mum to get, I think.
So it's lovely. It's great. I think we said at the time, fun thing to do. Some people go, why are they doing that sort of thing? But it's crazy, lovely. I had a dinky toy one when I was a little boy, so entirely appropriate that I've got a slot car one now. So yeah, very lucky. But that's not even my birthday yet. I won't get anything on my birthday now because I've got all my presents. But that's the joy of being 62. You can have things when you.
Yeah, doesn't happen at 51.
Well, you've got time to plan. That's all I can say. Talking of new stuff, what have you seen on the various
Not much.
interwebs?
It's been a bit quiet. There is a nice teal livery for Artisan something or others, FF from Team Slot on what looks like new old stock Celica, whether it's a very old car, but Pendle's got it in stock. Very pretty. It's got the old style chassis, so can be a bit of a handful compared to the slightly upgraded modern chassis, but they come on smaller wheels, and this has got the old big wheels on, so they're filling the arches quite nicely. So that's caught my eye. There's a whole raft of absurdly cheap polycar Subarus in lane car colours, 22 quid, I think, retail. Thank you very much. So yeah, slotted quality, and a very small price for what looks like a reasonable little car for running lanes.
Is that, I'm going to say, is that the cheapest? Because that's not a discounted price. That is the as new price. Is that the cheapest slot car you can buy? If we were a car magazine, a consumer advice magazine, would we be saying
probably
this is
yeah. Because for a while it was those odd little Yaris's in bubble packs on cardboard, wasn't it?
G-slot.
Yes.
And then the perverse nature of slot car collecting, what were scorned and dismissed are now highly expensive if you want to buy one.
Oh really?
Yeah. Well, highly expensive, way beyond where they were, but they're climbing in value. I think those polycar Subarus. So this is the Subaru Saloon as opposed to the old BRZ coupe. Same principle, really. Sort of, you see club cars, lane cars, slotted running gear, slotted tyres, adjustable magnets. Obviously, the sets come with adjustable power, and they're really sturdy bodies, really sturdy. So perfect for clubs or for kids or for people who are just getting into it. I mean, cheap, reliable, but not cheap where it counts in terms of the running gear. I mean, arguably the best running gear you can get. So,
and I'm seeing, Scott, a lot of quite discounted scale electric cars around the place. Jadlam's got a big sale on, 14 to 25% off stuff. I mean, for them, it's across the range, so there's model kits and railways and whatever else. But quite a few retailers have got marked down scale electric cars.
Yes, and there'll probably be Bastos Rover, white Lotus Esprit, a couple of Mustangs in uninteresting liveries. If you can see that consistent pattern. I think
all the Esprits are marked down that I can see. The Jerry Marshall Racing one, the black and gold S2 and the white S1.
I think the fact that we're getting very close to the end of the financial year and the desire to clear out the warehouse so stock is gone and some cash has come in may be a factor in that. But I'm guessing. I don't know. But yeah, there does seem to be a push to clear the decks a little bit.
And, maybe Mr. Sports Direct is using his shares to influence things.
Well, do you want to expand on that? Because there's something that we saw a couple of weeks ago, isn't it? Yeah.
An increase in the shareholding from the man that nobody likes very much, who puts people on 0 hours contracts at Sports Direct and is blamed for all sorts of wrongs at Newcastle Football Club. I feel the need to increased his stake in Hornby, hasn't he?
Yeah, I feel the need to put an allegedly in the middle of all of that somewhere.
Well, you're on 0 hours contracts at Sports Direct. He's quite open about that.
Yeah. I can't remember his name. Can you remember his name? Anyway, this is
Mike something or other.
This is a sort of British entrepreneur, very successfully bought up some sports goods chains, which he grew to a huge extent, and also owned Newcastle United Football Club for a while. Then I think it's now in the ownership of a highly unsavoury political regime, but that's a different. Don't get me going on football club ownership. So yeah, probably I'd probably rather have a guy who puts people on 0 hour contracts. Anyway, he has bought, and the significance of his business dealings is if he has a trend, a habit, a style, it's to buy into things when it looks like they might be struggling a little bit. So he buys into them relatively cheaply with a view to acquiring them at a sort of bargain price. But then, unlike many, he doesn't sort of shut them down. He kind of usually grows them quite dramatically thereafter. And he has recently increased his shareholding in Hornby. So it will be, maybe he just likes toy trains and toy cars. Maybe it's a childhood, he's reached a point where he's had a football club, he's, the lyrics of the old song, and it's now, I'm going to buy myself a toy company. So maybe it's nostalgia.
Possibly.
Let's cling to that one. However, if he's listening, then we're in deep trouble. If he is listening, get in touch. We'd love to have a chat. It would be really good to have a chat, actually. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be a little bit nice to do. I hope. Hornby, Electrics, Airfix, they've gone through, their history is littered with kind of ups and downs of business performance, isn't it? And I know some folk.
Well, it's a British manufacturing enterprise, so
they've survived a long time, and I think they will survive. But I know that there's been a change in senior management there as well, and we wish them well. I think that stuff has been getting better and better. I buy Airfix and I buy Electrics. I can't talk about the Hornby and other stuff. And as much as people like to kind of bitch about it, I think Electrics are still launching more cars than anybody else, covering a wider range than anybody else. And if you walk into a non-specialist shop or a non-specialist website, they're probably the ones you're going to buy. Anyway, that's enough. Which reminds me, we must. The other person we should get on is the brand manager from Electric, Simon. And rather than tell him everything we think he's doing wrong,
we should ask him if he's now on a 0 hours contract.
No, that wouldn't be fun. That wouldn't be funny. No, but I think what would be genuinely interesting, because I know we've all got a view on what they should be doing. I'd like to hear why they do what they do, because having been in a real car company and suffered some of this, why don't you just make all of these things? Why do you do that? And then there's really good reason, usually involved legislation, profitability, all sorts of boring things which keep the company going. And I'm sure that's no different for a slot car company. So, the aforementioned pink Rolls Royces, I'm sure there's a very good reason. That probably makes them a lot more money than it's meant any Ferrari F1 car they ever do. So we must try and get him on it. But I want to do it as not to tell him what he's doing, what we think he's doing wrong, but to hear why they do what they do. Because I think that would be interesting. Now, before we close,
yes,
is it time for the second edition of the Trackside Chat with Nick, where we have slot stories? What have you got for us this week?
Oh, okay. So I didn't think we were going to do that because we wandered aimlessly through my slot box to describe our classes. But here's one I made earlier. It's the Scale Electric Audi Sport Quattro with a small Q. The short wheelbase version of the car. In real life, this was a horror story. This, as you'll see, the sump guard and sort of the front end of the car, it curves up towards the nose. And what happened? The air got underneath it, and the car sort of liked to do that. So when you see the cars going over jumps, it made the drivers very nervous because they had no idea how and when they were going to come down again because they couldn't see. Anyway, this one is in the livery that was worn by Michèle Mouton on her first visit to Pikes Peak, which she didn't win. She did win it the following year. And I used it for the World Rally Proxy, which was an event running literally worldwide. It was Australia and America and Britain and Europe. And it didn't actually get entered. It has been used quite a lot since, which is why there are a few scuffs on it, but it has got the World Rally Proxy numbers on it rather than the proper ones from Pikes Peak. These cars are actually not bad. Scale Electric made them, both the winged S1 version and the unwinged Sport Quattro. And the winged version, all those extra panels were literally just sort of welded onto the standard car. So actually the standard car is lighter, less top heavy, and a better platform to make a rally car out of. It's got the Scale Electric sprung rally guide on it, which is a little bit deeper. And it's nowhere near as quick as the RS200 Ford that Scale Electric did, which wins everything in that proxy, won every round and won the championship. But it's a Quattro, and therefore it's nice. Now, the story of the real car is that after it did Pikes Peak, it stayed in America, where John Buffum was the nominated Audi driver. He won the North American Rally Championship every year in a Quattro. And then they were having dinner and the car got nicked. Not the only one. There was a David Sutton run car that was stolen from Audi's offices outside Milton Keynes. That one was recovered fairly quickly, but they never recovered the John Buffum short wheelbase Audi Quattro, formerly run by Michel Mouton. So somewhere in America, I like to think there's a barn with a tarpaulin underneath which is this piece of 80s iconography. Not in this livery, because they did put it back into the standard rally livery with the BF Goodrich sponsorship that John Buffum was able to piece together for his North American rally program.
Now, I don't know whether the microphone picked up my doorbell ringing, but I'm going to ignore it for the purposes of asking you a follow-up question. I don't think it'd be in a barn. I think if somebody had managed to come across, acquire, or otherwise find the use of such a thing, they have probably headed off to the nearest empty road they can find, possibly with a curve in it. And given the notorious handling characteristics because it was huge amounts of boost, but with a lot of lag, I seem to remember, wasn't it?
Yes.
Or quite a bit of lag on a very short wheelbase with 4-wheel drive. And as you say, when it gathers up its skirts and goes, you can't really see over the bonnet because it's pointing at the sky.
And of course, the engine is all in front of the front axle.
It's all, as someone says, it's a German triumph of engineering over physics, but possibly not as much as it should have been. So I think probably that thing is down a ravine somewhere.
Probably,
because
yes.
Somebody will have launched it and pressed the loud pedal and said something to the effect of, let's see what it can do, and promptly sort of launched themselves off, Wile E. Coyote-like, some ravine. Hopefully to no great... But anyway, I'm sure that's more likely than it being under a tarpaulin. Good, so thank you for that one. See, that's I say this all the time. It's easy to say and not do. Is to get a little music for the Wimmers and Nick's trackside chats with Slotcast or whatever I'm going to call it. A little bit of music where we feed up and
the pipe.
And the pipe, yeah, definitely. We need some sort of wingback chair with a lamp over it. A slowly crackling fire made up of discarded slot cars parts that you can no longer make with. Anyway, so thanks for that. Right, so this is one of life's great mysteries for me. So the doorbell's gone. Is it A, more parcels with slot cars, or B, a next door neighbour telling me that the roof's leaking, or something else going wrong? All will be revealed, but I'm going to rush off and do that.
Okay.
So Thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying it. We'll speak to you again soon. I'll say goodbye.
Take care. See you soon.